You are not the problem when you pretend. You become the problem the moment you stop. That sentence sounds backwards. It isn't. Carl Jung called the thing you perform every day a persona, a mask built for approval, not for truth. And here is what his theory implies, even though he never said it this bluntly: the moment you take that mask off, the people around you do not relax. They tense up. Think about the last time you said no without an excuse attached to it. No apology. No cushioning. No justification stacked on top like insulation. Just no. Did it feel like freedom? Or did it feel like you'd just done something wrong? That reaction, the guilt, the sudden tightness in your chest, the urge to explain yourself, none of that came from you. It came from every mask you were trained to wear since childhood, since long before you had a say in the matter. Maybe you felt it in a family dinner, agreeing to something you didn't want just to keep the table calm. Maybe you felt it at work, smiling through a decision that quietly cost you something. Maybe you felt it with a friend, softening an honest opinion until it stopped being honest at all. None of that was weakness. It was training, repeated so many times it started to feel like personality. This is not a small idea, and it is not a comfortable one. So let's say it plainly right here before anything else. By the end of this video, you will understand why your authenticity does not just liberate you. It exposes everyone still wearing a mask around you. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Every room you walk into afterward will feel slightly different, and so, eventually, will you. This is not a video about being yourself. That phrase gets repeated so often, in so many places, that it has stopped meaning anything at all. It sounds like advice. It functions like noise. This is a video about something more specific and more demanding: detachment. Not detachment from people. Detachment from a performance. A deliberate, psychological process of separating your identity from the character you were taught to play in front of others. Carl Jung had a name for that character. He called it the persona, a term borrowed from the Latin word for a theatrical mask, the kind actors held up to their faces on ancient stages. Here is the part almost nobody talks about, the part this video is actually built around. The persona was never designed to express who you are. It was designed to manage what other people think of you. Those are two completely different jobs, and most people spend their entire lives confusing them for the same one. Jung once described watching patients arrive in his office wearing what he called a public face, polished, agreeable, carefully composed, and only after months of work would something else emerge underneath. A person barely anyone else had ever met. Not a worse version. A truer one. And when you finally start dismantling that mask, piece by piece, something strange happens. You do not simply become more free. You become a mirror. People who are still hiding behind their own masks start to see themselves reflected in your face, in your calm, in the space where your performance used to be, and they do not like what they see. That reaction is not an accident. It has a mechanism behind it. And we're about to walk through that mechanism, one layer at a time, starting with the mask itself. Let's start with the concept itself, because you cannot dismantle something you haven't named. Jung described the persona as a compromise, a negotiated agreement between who you privately are and what society is willing to accept from you. Notice that word again. Compromise. Not truth. Not identity. A compromise drafted before you were old enough to read the terms. You did not choose your first mask. It was assigned to you, fitted onto you, the way a costume gets fitted onto a child who has no say in the wardrobe. Think about it honestly. Before you could speak in full sentences, you already knew which version of you made your parents smile, and which version made them go quiet, or worse, made the room go tense. That's not a theory borrowed from a textbook. That's memory. Your memory. The good kid. The easy one. The strong one who doesn't cry. The responsible one who never asks for too much. Each of those phrases functioned as a costume, stitched onto you before you had the vocabulary to object, or even the awareness that objecting was an option. Jung's argument is unsettling precisely because it is so ordinary, so unremarkable on the surface. The persona is not a lie you consciously tell. It is a role you rehearse so many times in so many rooms that you eventually forget it was ever a role at all. This is where the real confusion begins, the one that keeps people trapped for decades. There is a difference between identity and social role, and almost nobody is ever taught to see it clearly. Your identity is what remains when no one is watching. It's the version of you that exists in an empty room with no audience, no performance, no image to manage. Your persona is what appears the instant someone walks into that room. The posture changes. The voice shifts. The face adjusts, sometimes in ways so small you'd never notice them happening. Most people spend their entire lives confusing the second for the first. They build careers, relationships, even entire identities, on top of a costume they mistook for skin. And here's what makes it harder to notice. You don't wear just one persona. You wear several, switching between them without thinking, the way you'd switch languages without translating in your head. One version for your parents. Another for your boss. Another for people you're trying to impress, and yet another, quieter one for people you've already given up trying to impress. Each version gets rehearsed until it feels automatic. And automatic feels like truth even when it isn't. So here is the question you need to sit with. Not answer right away. Just sit with it uncomfortably for a moment. Which version of you shows up when you are completely alone, with nothing to perform and no one to convince? Because that version, and only that version, might be the one that's actually real. Not the polished one. Not the agreeable one. The one that exists without an audience, without a performance review running in the background. And everything else, every mask stacked on top of it, comes at a cost we haven't talked about yet. Wearing a mask is never free. It has a price, and unlike most prices, it isn't paid up front. It's paid in installments, quiet ones, spread out over years, until the total becomes so large you can no longer see where it started. The first installment is anxiety. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. The quiet, low-frequency hum of anxiety that comes from managing an image 24 hours a day, in every conversation, every text message, every silence that stretches a second too long. Every interaction becomes a small performance review. Every pause becomes a potential threat. Did that sound right? Did I come across the way I wanted to? Are they judging me right now? The second installment is the fear of disappointing. You stop making decisions from desire and start making them from damage control. What will they think? What will they say behind my back? What if they're upset with me? Your own preferences, your own wants, get buried under a mountain of other people's imagined reactions. Reactions that, in most cases, never even happen the way you feared. The third installment is exhaustion, and it's a specific kind of exhaustion that sleep does not fix. Because you're not tired from living your life. You're tired from acting like you're living a life that fits everyone else's expectations of what your life should look like. And the final installment, the one that costs the most, is the slow, almost invisible erosion of your own identity. You wake up one day, maybe in your 30s, maybe later, and you realize you don't actually know what you want anymore. You only know what keeps the peace, what avoids conflict, what makes the room comfortable for everyone except you. Jung would say the persona was serving its intended function here. Protection through approval. It shields you from rejection, from conflict, from being disliked. That part is real. The shield works. But it also disconnects you from the only person whose approval was ever supposed to matter in the first place. Yourself. You spend years defending a version of you that was never even yours to begin with, and somewhere in that defense the real version goes quiet, then quieter, until you can barely hear it anymore. There's a fifth installment too, one that only shows up later, and it might be the cruelest of all. The relationships you build while wearing the mask are relationships built with people who never actually met you. They love the performance. They know the performance's habits, its preferences, its careful edges. And some quiet part of you always knows the difference even when you can't name it out loud. So if the mask costs this much, if it drains this much, installment after installment, year after year, why does almost no one take it off? That question deserves its own answer. And the answer is more layered than you'd expect. Before we get into the part of this that most people never confront, take a second. If any of this is landing, if you're already recognizing a mask you've been wearing without fully realizing it, without ever naming it, that recognition matters. It's the first crack in something that's been sealed for a long time. Subscribe now, because what comes next is the part that actually changes how you see every relationship in your life, every reaction you get from people, every moment where you felt too much, or not enough for simply being honest. Everything up to this point has been about the mask itself, why it exists, what it costs, and why so few people ever manage to set it down. What comes next is about what happens the moment you finally do, and why the people around you notice it before you even say a word. This next section is the reason the video exists. Alright. Let's continue exactly where we left off, with the question we haven't answered yet. Here's the uncomfortable answer. Fear. Not one fear. A stack of them, layered on top of each other so deep that most people never reach the bottom layer in their entire lives. Fear of rejection sits on top, the most obvious one. If I show you who I really am, will you still want me here? Will you still stay? Underneath that sits fear of solitude. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that being disliked and being alone were the same sentence, the same fate, the same threat. Underneath that sits the need for belonging, which Jung considered one of the deepest psychological drives a human being carries. Not a preference. Not a nice to have. A survival mechanism, inherited from a time when exclusion from the group meant something closer to a death sentence than a social inconvenience. And beneath all of that, at the very bottom, sits the oldest layer of all, family conditioning. You were rewarded for the mask, consistently, repeatedly, before you ever had a real chance to test what might happen without it. Every time the easy one got the warmth and the difficult one got the silence or the punishment, a pattern was carved into you, quietly, without ceremony, without you noticing it was happening at all. Psychology has a name for that pattern: social programming. It's not something you decided one day. It's something that was installed, gradually, the same way software gets installed without asking your permission each time. And the group doesn't just install the mask once. It keeps reinforcing it, quietly rewarding compliance, quietly punishing deviation year after year, until the mask no longer feels like something you're wearing. It feels like something you are. And here is the loop this whole structure creates, the loop that keeps the mask in place for decades. You cannot test whether people would accept the real you because testing it feels catastrophically dangerous. So instead of testing it, you avoid the test altogether. The mask stays on, not because it's working, not because it's making you happy, but because removing it feels like risking everything you've built. And the fear rarely announces itself as fear. It disguises itself as practicality. I'm just being professional. I'm just keeping the peace. I'm just being considerate. Those sentences sound reasonable. Sometimes they even are reasonable. But underneath a lot of them is the same old signal, running quietly in the background. Don't risk the group finding out who you actually are. Here's the trap, stated plainly. The fear that keeps the mask on is almost never about the present moment. It's about a memory, an old one, from a time when you were smaller, more dependent, more vulnerable than you are now. What breaks that loop is not confidence. Confidence is a mask too, in most cases, a more expensive one that requires an audience to keep functioning. What breaks it is something smaller, quieter, and much harder to fake. Not a performance of fearlessness, but an actual reduction in how much the fear is allowed to run the decision. You don't defeat the fear. You simply stop letting it vote on everything. And that's exactly where we're going next. There is a specific moment when detachment begins, and it rarely looks the way people expect. It doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't look like a breakdown or a confrontation or a speech. It looks like silence. You stop justifying. You stop explaining a decision that never actually required an explanation in the first place. Someone asks why. And for the first time in longer than you can remember, you don't answer. You just let the question sit there, unanswered, and nothing collapses. You learn to say no, and you leave it there. No cushioning wrapped around it. No apology stacked on top like insulation against their disappointment. You stop needing to convince anyone of anything, and this is the part people misunderstand the most. Notice what this is not. It is not coldness. It is not indifference dressed up in the language of growth, the way some people mistake detachment for superiority. It is the quiet withdrawal of energy from a performance you no longer need to give, night after night, room after room. And here is the part that separates real detachment from a temporary phase, from a mood that fades in a week. You start accepting that you will be misunderstood, and you let that be okay. Not tolerating it through gritted teeth. Accepting it fully the way you'd accept weather. Because trying to be understood by everyone at all times was always just another version of the mask, a more exhausting one, wearing a costume of honesty while still performing for an audience that was never going to be satisfied anyway. Picture the old version of you in a difficult conversation, over-explaining, softening, circling back 3 times to make sure no one felt hurt. Now picture the detached version, saying the true thing once, clearly, and letting the silence afterward simply exist. Same person. Completely different relationship to approval. Once you stop needing that audience's approval, something shifts, and it shifts in 2 directions at once. It shifts in you. And it shifts in everyone standing close enough to notice. Inside you, the shift feels like space opening up. Decisions get quieter, faster, less negotiated with an invisible committee. You stop rehearsing conversations in the shower, stop replaying interactions afterward for hidden meanings that were never actually there. You start noticing how much of your old life was built around anticipating reactions that, more often than not, never even came. That second shift, the one happening in other people, is where this video is really going. This is the center of everything we've built so far. When you drop the mask, you don't just change your own internal experience. You change the experience of everyone standing close enough to witness it happening. Here's what occurs, mechanism by mechanism, reaction by reaction. Someone who is still performing their own persona, still managing their image carefully, still terrified of being fully seen, feels discomfort around you. Not because you did anything to them. Because your ease, your lack of performance, reminds them of their own exhaustion, the one they've been avoiding looking at directly. Someone who chases approval feels envy, quiet, unspoken envy, rarely admitted even to themselves. Not because you have more than them. Because you stopped needing something they still cannot survive without. Someone who manipulates through image, through control, through carefully curated impressions, loses power around you. Manipulation depends entirely on an audience that still cares deeply what others think of them. You stopped being that audience the moment you dropped your mask. And someone who has built an entire identity on appearances, on how things look rather than how they are, feels exposed simply by standing next to someone who no longer needs any appearance at all. This is not coincidence, and it isn't random social friction. Jung had a precise term for what's actually happening here: projection. His theory holds something that sounds simple but runs incredibly deep. People see, in others, the parts of themselves they have repressed, buried, and refused to examine directly. When you remove your mask, you become, without asking for the role, an accidental mirror. They project their own hidden fear onto you and call it your arrogance. They project their own hidden prison onto you and call it your coldness. They project their own hidden anxiety onto you, and experience your calm as though it were a personal accusation, a silent judgment you never actually made. You will hear things like, "You've changed," or "You're different now," or "You used to be warmer." Listen closely to what those sentences actually mean. They are rarely about you. They are almost always a report on someone else's discomfort, translated into language about your character. That's the mechanism laid out fully. It's not personal, even though it will feel personal. It's projection doing exactly what projection always does, borrowing your face to display a feeling that was never yours to begin with. Picture a room. A family gathering, a work event, doesn't matter which. You used to enter that room scanning faces, adjusting your tone before you'd even said a word. Now you enter the same room and just stand there unadjusted. Nothing about you is aimed at anyone. But something in the air changes anyway because the people who were used to your old performance no longer have it to react to, and the absence itself becomes the message. Your piece does not attack them. It reveals them whether either of you asked for that or not. And this is the loop finally closing, the one opened all the way back when we asked why the price of the mask is paid so consistently, but almost never refunded. The refund is this. The moment you stop performing, you stop absorbing everyone else's projections as though they were verdicts on who you really are. You start to see them for what they are, information about the other person, not about you. There is a name for where this entire process leads, and it is the most important concept in Jung's entire body of work. Individuation. Not individualism. Not becoming more selfish, more isolated, more cut off from the people around you. Individuation is the psychological process of becoming whole, of integrating the parts of yourself that were split off and hidden in order to keep the persona intact. Jung believed every person carries a shadow, a collection of traits, desires, and impulses rejected by the persona because they didn't fit the acceptable image being maintained. Anger, you were told, was too much. Ambition, you were told, was too selfish. Needs, you were told, were too demanding for anyone to reasonably have. Individuation means going back for those rejected pieces one by one. Not to unleash them carelessly onto the world, not as an excuse for cruelty disguised as authenticity, but to integrate them, to finally stop pretending they don't exist inside you. Integration doesn't look like an explosion. It looks like finally letting yourself feel angry without immediately apologizing for it. It looks like naming an ambition out loud instead of shrinking it into something more modest and more palatable. It looks like asking for what you actually need instead of hoping someone notices without you having to say it. This is not a one-time event. It's not a switch that flips after watching a video, reading a book, or having one honest conversation. Jung described individuation as a lifelong process, one that never fully completes, because the shadow keeps generating new material as you keep growing. A person who has moved through individuation does not need the mask anymore, and this is the key distinction. Not because they've become perfect, but because they've stopped performing perfection in the first place. They accept their imperfections instead of managing them behind a curtain. They stop living to be liked and start living to be whole, which are two very different goals that often get confused as the same one. And in doing so, they become, in Jung's own word for it, whole. Not flawless. Whole. Whole enough to hold contradiction without collapsing. Whole enough to be gentle and firm in the same sentence, to be soft and unmoved at the same time. This is the most definitive idea in this entire video, so sit with it for a moment before we move on. The goal was never to remove the mask and discover there's nothing underneath it, an empty space, a void where identity should be. The goal was to remove the mask and finally meet what was always there, waiting, underneath the performance the whole time. Here is the metaphor that holds everything we've covered together. Your authenticity is a mirror. It was never a weapon. You were never trying to expose anyone, and you don't need to start now. You simply stopped hiding, and the people still hiding saw their own reflection in the space where your mask used to be. That reflection was always going to appear, sooner or later, the moment anyone stopped performing near them. That is not your fault. But it is your choice, entirely yours, what happens next. You can put the mask back on. You can manage the discomfort, keep the peace, smooth things over, and stay exhausted for another decade. Or you can stay detached, stay whole, and let the mirror do exactly what mirrors are built to do. Neither choice makes you a bad person. The mask kept you safe for a long time, and some part of you built it out of love, not weakness, love for the people you didn't want to disappoint, love for the belonging you didn't want to lose. That part deserves acknowledgement, not shame. But safety and aliveness are not the same thing, and at some point you have to decide which one you're actually choosing. The choice is individual, and it is also urgent, because every single day spent performing is a day spent absent from your own life, a day you don't get back. Notice something else once you start paying attention. People who have done this work tend to talk less, not more. They explain less. They argue less. They stop trying to convince anyone of anything because the mask was always the thing doing the convincing. Their presence starts to say more than their words ever could, and silence, once uncomfortable, becomes something closer to a language of its own, one that doesn't need translating. If this changed how you see the mask you've been wearing, subscribe and tell me in one sentence which mask you're finally ready to take off. Because the version of you underneath it, the one that's been waiting this whole time, is still there. Still waiting. Still yours.